3, 2, 1, go.
Hello. This is Corey Thompson from Aboveboard TV, branded, and Dice Tower Dish.
And this is the Podfather of gaming, Stephen Bonacore. You are listening to Board Games Insider, episode 310, and we're recording this live March 5th, 2024 at Dice Tower West. Board Games Insider is proud to be powered by Board Game Geek. Corey, sitting next to your lovely face right now is a true, wonderful thing for me to be seeing you. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. This is such a fun trip. So Stephen got the Bonacore suite at Rio. This is just an insane room. But I'm early for Vegas. This is so fun. Yeah. Visiting friends and playing games and eating good food, just having a good time.
So yeah, we're recording this from what has now become known in the last 2 hours as the Podfather's place, because here at the Rio, they are doing major renovations, and our favorite bar, which is the lobby bar, which is a great place to hang out with people at night. You know, we're not drinking during the day, no day drinking going on. We hang out at night and we hold court, and it's just a lot of fun. But they closed it this week because of big renovations. I ended up getting this ridiculous suite because it was like $20 more a night, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing, and we'll have people game.
How you swung that.
We're hanging out here on a table in the room behind me. You can see there's the bar in the room. Which I stocked the bar, of course. There's a sitting area. There's a bed. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we're going to be gaming here, hanging out, and we're going to try to do some extra coverage of Dice Tower West. So
sure.
It hasn't started yet. We both got here over the last day or so.
Right now it's Tuesday, so tonight early registration starts, and the convention starts in full tomorrow.
Right, Wednesday to Sunday. So tomorrow is when the gaming begins. I might be playing War of the Ring, I've heard, which is going to be great. But yeah, so we won't have coverage now because we don't know much going on. But we're gonna try to even do some like quote unquote live coverage, walk around, talk to some people and stuff like that later in the week. But right now, why don't we talk about what's happening with Aboveboard TV and Corey Thompson. Dr. Corey Thompson, what's happening, man?
All the exciting stuff was really last week. So this one, I mean, what's most exciting is here, Vegas, now. I'm just so excited to be here. I arrived early, because I like to arrive to conventions early and visit people if I can. And I found out that there's another show going on at the same time. It's Toy Fest, which is an actual toy fair. I've never been to any of the major toy fairs, so this was really interesting for me. Toy Fest, mostly toys, Legos, things like that. It was interesting seeing that side, but also lots of friends. I got to visit with Kid Table Board Games, with Arcade Wonders, with R&R, with Smirk and Dagger.
Really nice.
It was really nice seeing everybody, and it's such a different atmosphere at a toy show than at a board game show.
And I forgot that you had never, you know, not being a real Board Games Insider, you had never been to like the New York Toy Fairs. I mean, it would never make sense for you to, and it makes sense for like nobody really who.
I've always been in media, so yeah, you know, it's a different world.
And toy shows are like 5% gaming of any type, and a lot of that's mass, and 95% or more of toys and stuff that retailers, mom and pop shops, or even bigger places buy. So it's not normally a thing that a lot of people would go to, certainly people who listen to us.
I loved it, though.
Yeah, but
I thought
it was
really cool. Spent the day there yesterday.
That's really cool. What else happening?
Not too much. So I'm getting ready for Dice Tower West. Gonna, just bring Aboveboard around and talk to everybody about it. Talk about the videos that we're gonna do. We're still lining things up to do hopefully a big Europe trip with Aboveboard. Some other exciting videos coming down the pipe, but nothing I can really talk about it right this second.
Oh, come on.
I know.
We actually have, as I scraped questions for today from the guild, there is some stuff about what you would really like to do if you could do anything. So hopefully I'll get to that question.
Do anything.
You can? Can you be on the moon and play like Moon, the board game on the moon? I don't know if you can yet.
It's very expensive.
It could be expensive to do that, Elon. Anyway, if you're done, I'll get over here. So the Podfather Gaming, very light stuff as well. It's been a a low intensity time because I was away. I was on that cruise. We talked about that. Friend of the show, Marion, and her husband and son, and Paula and I went on this cruise. Not board gaming related at all. Just had a great time there. And now we're going to be here at Dice Tower West for this week. After that, it'll be one of the longest stretches of being home in a long time, like 4 straight weeks. Until, of course, the Gathering of Friends, where the industry almost descends again together in Niagara Falls. But the one thing I do want to point out again, of course, this is the self-serving portion. We got to talk about the stuff that we're doing.
It's
Ascending Empires Zenith Edition by Play to Z is out there right now on Kickstarter. Please go check it out. Maybe it's not for you, but check it out. Go bring it up. There's we have 500 plus backers at this point, and we are we funded in 3.5 hours, so things are going well. Of course, we're up against things like Thunder Road Vendetta's new Kickstarter too.
Oh yeah,
but that's okay. There's room for these games are very different. So 4X game in 1 hour. I think it's something that if you like to play games that are fast and fun with some great thinky stuff, because there's many ways to win the game, many tech things to do in that game, I think it's kind of a game for you. So check that out on Kickstarter. It's going to be going on for probably just another few days once you hear this. So this might be one of the last chances for you to check on this. Ascending Empires by Play to Z. Search for either of those things on Kickstarter. Let's get over to the news and the event deck. All right, so Corey, here in the news, it is a pretty light news week again. We're in that light news week season, and one of the things that we would like to point out is that another friend of the show, because he listens to the show all the time, Stefan Brassard. Hi, Stefan. He has moved into a new position, and that is a consulting position, all about games consulting. And Stefan, who, if you don't know him, he was at Yellow for a while.
Yellow USA Distribution.
He was with Funko Games, Wizards of the Coast, Asmodee. He's done a bunch of things in the industry. So he was the president of Gamma for many years. So we wanted to wish him well in this new position. If anybody is looking for consulting within the board game industry, you can check out All About Games.
All About Games. They've been around for a little while now, and it's basically if you have designs, things of that sort, and you need advice on how to prep it, get it published, and have assistance through the process. That's what they do.
That is, and there's a few companies that do this. This is certainly one of the more professional ones and bigger ones. So congratulations to Stefan in his new role, and I hope great things will be happening over at All About Games. So this one is a very interesting one, Corey, that you put in here. Mass Effect co-op board game.
Yeah, I was really excited about that. So Mass Effect is an immensely popular video game series that's been around for a long time now. And, as is inevitable, we have a Mass Effect board game that's been announced. But what makes this one really exciting for me is who is doing it. So the Mass Effect board game is coming from Modiphius, and Modiphius has been making a lot of moves.
Yes.
They've been in the news quite a bit lately. But it's designed by the team of Eric Lang, so huge name in board games.
Absolutely.
And Calvin Wong Tse Loon, who is really active influencer, has great stories, is so entertaining, an actor.
He's an actor, which is so cool.
He was the main designer on Galzier, which was such a good adventure type game in the animal universe of Dale of Merchants. So, one of my favorite games. So, it's a fantastic pair. I'm really excited about this game.
It's going to be a co-op game, I hear, for, 1 to 4 players. Do you know anything about the gameplay at all besides what you're going to be doing in this game?
This kind of dropped out of nowhere for me. So, it's co-op. I know that they're bringing a lot of the same beloved characters. So, the list is... the co-op game will see players battling Cerberus as Shepard, Tally, Garrus, Liara, Rex, all of the characters that people love from the original video games. I don't know too much about it. It's got a narrative campaign. It has a story. It is co-op. I think it's just going to be fantastic.
I'm actually really surprised, besides having Calvin Wong as one of the designers on this. Eric Lang is a designer, right? So Eric, good friend of both of ours. His kind of new thing is moving toward lighter, more approachable games, right? We talked about that just even on the last episode, I think. So he's now in this what appears to be much bigger game, and so this must have been going on for a long time, and it could have been, this could have been years and years in the making versus some of the newer stuff he's done that has only been 1 to 2 years in the making.
Eric's been kind of hinting that he had something really big he's wanted to talk about for a few years, and I think this is it. It's been like a fantastic year for Eric. He's got his Hasbro game, which was just announced at Cannes only a few weeks ago. And this really surprised me. I didn't hear any rumors about this coming, and this is a cool one.
Is it Cannes or Cannes?
It's probably Cannes.
I don't know. I can't speak French.
Oh, but I'm sure you're pronouncing it correctly.
I bet somebody actually told me no, it is Cannes, so I don't know. But anyway, Cannes Film Festival, Cannes Film Festival, who knows? Last thing we're going to talk about is the return of Heroscape. Now, we talked about this extensively about a year ago, I think it was, give or take.
It's been going on for a while.
That Hasbro, using their crowdfunding system known as Pulse, Hasbro Pulse, put up Heroscape there, and it was with a lot of fanfare because we talked about it extensively. Heroscape is one of those games that has got a storied past.
They announced their Pulse system by crowdfunding HeroQuest, and they were very happy with it, and it did well, and so everybody was just scrambling and saying that they needed Heroscape to come back. It's such a beloved IP in the industry.
But what ended up happening, of course, with that is that it didn't fund to the extent that Hasbro, their funding level was like $2 million, something like that. I don't remember the number.
2 or 3.
It was something like $2-ish or so million, and they got 1.8 million or 1.5 million or something like that. So they basically, like any other either Kickstarter or GameFound crowdfunding platform, they said, well, we're not doing the game. But the reason that it didn't fund was there was so much backlash against some of the stuff that was going on. And the biggest point of contention was that you had to buy everything. There was one level, and I don't know for sure, but it was $250 or $280. That was the level, plus of course shipping, for this monster amount of content. That wasn't even painted like all the original Heroscape was. So with that issue, people were like, I'm not backing this, I'm angry, and it didn't fund.
It was a really big ask, too. I just looked it up. They were asking for 8,000 backers.
That was the number.
8,000 people to pre-order it. And they ended up getting more than half. They got 4,353. Oof. And whereas most Kickstarters or crowdfunding projects will have a relatively low bar to say it's okay, and then they'll forgive if it doesn't go great and often make the product anyway, Hasbro just answered this crowdfunding with, now it's dead. And they stopped.
And in came Renegade Games, right?
Yes.
So Renegade Games has a very big relationship now with Hasbro. In fact, as we reported, they are picking up title after title after title from the old Avalon Hill catalog.
Almost all the hobby games out of Avalon Hill are getting picked up by Arno, or by Renegade. My apologies.
The more like modernish ones, like the Risk games.
Well, they also picked up all the Axis and Allies.
Games, but we're not talking about the old school boxes on the shelf. Bookcase.
Yeah.
Not those games, but sort of the ones that we have played when we started in the hobby, right? Those kind of games, they picked them all up and they're continuing to release them, and that's great because they deserve to be printed. So Renegade came in, and then they said they were going to do it, obviously under license with Hasbro, but there were some issues there. Funny enough, where Renegade was kind of taking a deviation and not. I want to be careful the way I say this. I'm not going to insult my friends at Renegade because they are very good friends. They were accused of not listening to the community because the community was so engaged with the Hasbro reprint. The developer there, the head of development for Heroscape in particular, Craig Van Ness, noted designer. He was fully engaged with the community.
One of the biggest names in Hasbro game design over the decades.
Great guy. He was engaged. He had other people from the community working for him to continue development. Renegade stepped away a little bit and started doing things differently. They, though, listened then to the community and to those criticisms. So they went back to the original card designs and things like that. They are releasing the game in bits, not in the full, like you have to spend $250. You can get a starter set. You get the mass set. You can buy paints. You can buy unpainted. You can buy terrains.
Well, Heroscape especially classically has just tons of plastic.
Right.
So it can be expensive to get everything. And it's really interesting with an IP as beloved as Heroscape or HeroQuest, which was done earlier. You get this mix of people kind of want a new one, but they want the new one to be exactly like the one they loved.
Right.
So people get upset if you change it, but also upset if it looks exactly the same. And HeroQuest looked exactly the same as the original 1990s release. So they tried a different thing with Heroscape, but what's, like you said, what's really important is they're listening to the community.
Yeah.
So the community says we don't like this. They go, okay, well, what about? And they play with it.
And that is obviously key to developing a relationship with your fans for this game. And this particular game has got some real passionate people behind in the community as gamers. I know I haven't played it in years now, but I own the base sets from the original, some expansions, the Marvel version of the game. So I'm going to back this, and I'm going to back it with the paints. And yeah, it's going to be really freaking expensive.
Well, you can't understate how important Heroscape was to the community.
Yeah.
Several board game companies were birthed purely out of fan love of Heroscape, most notably Plaid Hat Games.
That's a very important thing. So Colby Dowk, who is the current president, the owner, he had sold Plaid Hat's got a whole story that we can go into, but he, who was one of the lead designers from the original Heroscape, created, when he left Hasbro, he created Plaid Hat Games, and Plaid Hat Games became a fantastic company.
Oh, yeah.
So really interesting story there. Certainly more to hear about Heroscape as time goes on, but I'm a fan, and I will be backing Heroscape. But you should back Ascending Empires first, and then back Heroscape. Okay. All right, everybody. Let's get over now to strategy and tactics. All right, our good friend Lal Margu from Luxembourg, a very big friend of the show. He's always putting out questions for us. Or she, I don't know. I listened to your podcast for half an eternity now. Yes, you have. I'm glad that you have a new guy.
I'm the new guy.
Are you the new guy?
I'm the new guy.
And I started getting used to him a bit. Indeed, he also has an interesting point of view. But is he afraid of flying, or does he have problems to refurnish his house? We don't know. But that's not my question. He definitely doesn't have problems flying, and he does a lot of stuff in his house. But here's the question. Tell us a game you really like, but you're not good at, and you usually lose. And the other way around. Tell us a game you're good at, but you really can't stand. Take care, folks, and I'll see you at Essen.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's a great question. I get that all the time. I mean, I'll point out the obvious that War of the Ring is obviously my favorite game, and I don't think I'm any more than average at that game. I wouldn't say I suck at it. I know it pretty well. Games. What do you think? A game that you love and you suck at. Games that you dislike but you're just good at.
I'm not crazy good at games. I play a lot of games and I lose a lot of games and I have a lot of fun. I like exploring through the mechanisms of games. So I'm going to say Food Chain Magnate. I really enjoy playing it and I am absolutely terrible at it. But I have such a good time and I lose all my money and I get beaten so badly. But just the mechanisms and the interplay between that I just find fascinating.
A game that comes to mind that I like a lot, I think it's a fantastic game, and I love trick-taking card games, is Bottle Imp. I
love Bottle Imp.
I suck at Bottle Imp, and of all genres of gaming, I think trick-taking is the one that I'm best at. And I say I'm an average gamer. My friends back in New Jersey say I suck too. They always say like, you lose a lot. I'm like, no, I probably lose 1 out of 4, which is like, your average, because
if you got 4 people around the table,
average number of plays, 4 people, I lose 1 out of, win 1 out of 4. That's about average. But that's a game where perfect game for 3 players, playable with 4 as well. But with the 3 players and the 3 colors and the interaction, I like it that way the best.
Sure.
And I'm truly bad at it. I'm always getting stuck with that bottle. I'm always getting hurt. New edition coming out soon.
That's true.
New edition coming out.
It's one of my favorite trick takers. I'm pretty good at it.
Are you?
I think it's a really clever game.
Maybe you can.
I forget who did the first edition.
Z-Man did the first edition, I think.
Okay.
Well, there might have been one even before that. Stronghold Games did the second or third.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Love having that in my catalog.
I am drawing a complete blank as to a game that I don't like to play, but I'm good at. The biggest problem is I enjoy almost every game.
Yeah, I think every game has a purpose. Every game, even games that I really, like,
Yeah, so I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, that's a hard one, man. But thank you for that question. Arno Vander, also from the Netherlands. He's at Full Moon. Hey guys, thinking about new questions to ask you. Steven, can you share some light on your shelves of opportunity? How many games are there yet unplayed? As you regularly tell us you bought a new game, but somehow I got the impression you are most often buying than playing new ones. Same question, of course, for Ignacy and Corey. Ignacy obviously not here, but Corey as well. So
I have seen your shelves, Steven, and when I saw them, I think that only about 20% of them were actually out of the shrink.
I'd say 20% are in shrink. I mean, it could be more, certainly. But
you have a great collector's set of games. You have a lot of games that are pristine and in shrink and are cool games from when you were publishing, and you had copies of everything. But they're well organized.
But I'm very specific about it. There's no game that I won't play or touch. I mean, if I happen to have a game in shrink, and I think we talked about this yesterday, and somebody comes over and says, I'd love to play that, I'm like, I would probably say, can you teach it? If they say, absolutely, I can play. Rip it open, let's go. So
I'm the same.
I mean, look, I don't know how many games it was one of my projects that, who knows, maybe I'll do it over the next 4 weeks. I really wanted to do a full inventory and another purge of games, and I don't know if I'm going to do it, but my guess is 25% of the games are still in shrink. The bigger games get obviously played less. Yeah. So what thing that I just got, if Ignacy was here, he would appreciate this. I just got my copy of Robinson Crusoe, that new collector's edition.
Mine just showed up.
Of course, it's sitting there unplayed and unopened. But Paula actually said to me, "Let's play it and let's beat it again, so we can tease Ignacy that."
That just means you played it wrong.
That you played it wrong. That was his exact quote when I told him I won the game. You played it wrong.
I believe him.
He might be right, but I don't think so.
I've probably got about 10% in my shelf of opportunity, but I mean, I have a lot of people over. I play a lot of games in big, huge groups, and that 10% is still hundreds of games.
Yes, you have a very, very, very extensive collection.
I'm working on it.
His collection of board game tables are bigger than some people's board game collections. It's that big. There's a great company down here on the road.
I should come home with another. Put it in my car.
That's right. You got a car here. You could do it.
I could. I just pack it in the car. Have another table.
Game Theory Tables is literally 5 miles away here in Las Vegas. Great company. That's the one I own. Gregory Delman. Gregory. That's not a common name. It's my brother's name, but you spell it with 2 G's. Anyway, he's at Wanlo on The Geek. With the market being so crowded, what's the best way to stand out in the market? Gregory, if I knew that, I would be much richer than I am. The one thing you prioritize over all else, is it art, bits, gameplay, reviews? So, I mean, literally you're asking the multi-million-dollar question here. How does one stand out? Corey, what do you think is some of the best ways to stand out?
I think that every company picks one of these, And we know companies that stand out because of their art. We know companies that stand out because of their mechanisms and strategy. We talked about Splotter Games.
Oh.
Everybody loves their strategy, loves their games. They're very well thought out, very mathematical games, not known for art.
Not known for their beautiful art.
Stonemaier has amazing art and branding, and their games are very good, but I think it's the look and feel of a Stonemaier game that drives that company. So basically game companies, I feel, grab one of these niches and do the best they can with it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like, and so let's pick a company that that is doing obviously very well, like CMON. They certainly have specifically created the overproduced, and I don't mean that in a bad way, overproduced game, right? No, you could play a game with cardboard chits. We did that for years.
Yeah.
They have created the game that will astonish you on the table. Almost every game they bring out, right? We talked about Dune,
Gorgeous
War for
art,
Arrakis.
gorgeous miniatures.
Yeah. So they
over the top production.
Yeah. So they've done that. So what is the best way? The best way is the way that your fans will buy your game and you can sell games. Because in the end, if you can't sell enough games, you can't really stay. You can only be a hobby in this industry. You can't really make a living.
Yeah.
And that's the end. So, Gregory, when you come up with those great ways, you're going to call me, and you and I are going to make several million more dollars. A board game family who's at Board Game Family. When are you going to remake your intro to include
We've gotten
Corey?
this so many
we
times.
keep getting. So you obviously have some fans out there, sadly.
I think they just feel sorry for me.
Well, they should, because you're a sad sack.
I have barely been relegated above temp now, so I don't always have to bring the coffee anymore, but they do mention my name on occasion.
I actually had to buy my own coffee. Here it is.
That's
right
really
here.
a shame.
I've got coffee right here, sitting here. We are doing this in a Vegas morning. Greg Louder, who's at LouderGML, asks, do you think digital versions of board games take away from sales or draw new customers? Now, this is something we have talked about quite extensively on the show, but always interesting to somebody who maybe hasn't heard the answer or as times change, how it's going. The first example of any study done was from Days of Wonder, the old Days of Wonder, before they were bought by Asmodee. They literally commissioned a study, and I don't know how they did it. I don't remember, but the conclusion was digital sales fuel physical sales, physical sales fuel digital sales. Yep. So it's a loop. People find the game digitally, they buy the physical. They play the physical, they want to also own the digital. The problem, of course, with this entire cycle or this entire thing is that it's a very expensive thing to make a digital game. In fact, I'm going to say to make a good digital implementation costs more than to make a good physical implementation.
It depends how much your business is oriented towards doing that.
Sure.
There's definitely some companies that can put out digital implementations much easier, and some companies that have to put a huge amount of overhead in to get started in digital implementation. But yes, it's a very expensive proposition. The other place to look, which has wonderful transparency, is actually Stonemaier Games again. Stonemaier has put up their numbers of the big example is going to be Wingspan.
Right.
How many digital Wingspans are sold? How many physical Wingspans have been sold? And they're really interesting numbers. And every game that has a digital implementation, it's not like it's consistent. It's not like you always get half as many or a tenth as many. They're all over the place. And I think that's the biggest take home.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think that digital games compete with the physical game or hurt it in any way.
That is absolutely true. Greg then asks, what are the games you would recommend new game designers play to better understand the state of modern board game design? And I think this can be taken in many ways, but I think that one of the things that any game designer must do is to play the archetype in each category. I mean, it's assuming that you want to. Let's say you want to make a cooperative game. If you don't play Pandemic or you don't understand Pandemic, you're not playing the game that created everything and still stands as a pinnacle of game
It
design.
is a fantastic example, but I worry a little bit that pandemic created a model for a cooperative game that it has taken us 10 years to get out of, to make a different style cooperative game. But I agree, pandemic should be played. It is a model game, and there's amazing design in there.
But I guess maybe I'll refine my answer and bring his question in. So, if a game designer wants to do something X, you should play a crap ton of games that use X.
I agree. I've asked a lot of designers in interviews, how many games do you play? And inevitably, there's a long discussion about, I have no time, I'm always working on my games. But I feel designers should have a working knowledge of the game industry and should have played a lot of games. As far as specific things that give lessons, I would play any of the modern games from Shem Phillips for both knowledge of worker placement and graphic design. He's got such an ergonomic, icon-driven simplicity that is consistent in his brand throughout his games, and that's a lesson that I think we need to learn.
Good. Greg's third question here. Which method of advertising have you found works best? BGG ads, Facebook ads, play to win at conventions, giveaways, social media? My answer is
loud screaming, lots of just in the middle of the hall, just screaming at the top of your lungs.
My answer is do them all.
Yeah.
A very great gentleman, and I will point out it was the COO of Steve Jackson Games, Phil Reed. Do you know Phil?
Yep.
I think he's now retired. Really nice guy that ran the company for Steve for the longest time. He said to me, always spend money on advertising and marketing, because you never know if it was the first dollar or the last dollar that made that sale. So that was his model. Like, just, you got to do this, and you got to do it across the board. So that's a very broad answer, but I think that Facebook ads are fantastic because they are so targeted. If I want to reach only men 18 to 22 that live in New Jersey, you can absolutely target that exact demographic. So they're very interesting thing. People who have the word game in their profile. So Facebook ads absolutely are great for this. I'm a big fan of like supporting the conventions with like Play to Win, and I used to do that via Envoy. They would run Play to Wins at conventions for people and stuff like that, or just using the Envoy system to go out to conventions when you're not even there to get your games played. We
do have a small word of mouth community, so a lot of companies have made the name for themselves by having a face, by having, actively working with the community at conventions and things like that. So it's a great way to do it.
Right.
But we have so many good advertising things now, and I do feel that our industry, the board gaming industry, undervalues the power of spending money on advertising and marketing.
Absolutely does. It does. One more question. Scott V. Scott Dawn 1 on the Geek. Big question here. How do macroeconomic factors affect board game sales? Man, he's talking my language. Macroeconomic factors. For instance, it looks like the United States has been slowly heading for a recession. That's a very big conversation, which it's, as of your writing, yes. As of now, it looks like we're going to avoid it. Is that bad for board game sales because people have less disposable income to spend? Or is it good because a $50 board game lasts forever and is cheaper, a more lasting source of entertainment rather than a dinner and a movie? And then he also points out other factors might be seasonal, natural disasters, election, war. So this is a fantastic question.
There's a lot in there.
Right.
And I'm going to, in a very ignorant manner, sum it up in one line.
Because you're going to look to your financial advisor for...
Well, I asked my financial advisor. No, we're a luxury industry.
Yes.
And when money gets tight, people don't buy games.
Right. That is true. And certainly a recession or any kind of problem is not going to be a positive factor. But here's the very interesting thing. I've been in this industry for a while, and we have seen growth and growth and growth. We did hit a bubble here where things did come down, but that was the effect of too much product, too many companies reaching too much. We are essentially, this is a crazy statement maybe, we're essentially a recession-proof industry. Now, not like 100%, but it's like, it's the milk and eggs. People talk about milk, I think, as being a thing. Doesn't matter what the price of milk is. People have to buy milk, and they do.
Yeah.
Will they buy a little less? Sure. Will they switch out? But they're not going to buy soda.
Industry thing.
They're not going to buy Coca-Cola because they used to drink milk. They got to drink milk. So while there is a luxury factor, people have shown the 2008 recession was a monstrous recession. It was called the Great Recession, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? Board game sales grew during that period of time, right? So that's a pretty huge thing. I think that the things shift and change. Look at COVID. We certainly had 2 months where there were almost no sales because everything was closed. I mean, like Amazon stopped even selling games for a little bit. They were only selling staple products.
That one was interesting because we did all right because I think people were looking for something to do. If you're holed up in your house, what do? Video games did well, board games did well.
Absolutely. So, Scott, that's a long-winded answer for the fact that we're going to survive just about anything. I won't go into things like war because that's just bad. But there's many factors that make things grow and make things up. I think the biggest problem with this industry right now is too much. And that's not something that I can solve or you can solve. It's going to be the good companies will rise to the top.
Competition will make its way through like it always does.
It does.
But yeah, like you said, there's been a number of companies that were kind of known as putting out way too many games, and they toned it back. And, some of the most famous board game companies put out 2 or 3 games a year. But they're notable.
They're notable games, and that is really the new model. Do less, make it more. Make it bigger to market or bigger games or whatever to compensate. That's it for strategy and tactics. Let's get over to play testing. All right. So we had, before we get into last week's question and this week's question, a great response that came through on my YouTube channel. It was amazing because we talked about last week about semi-co-op games.
Mad at me about my game, my question, huh?
Me mad? No. So this is what happened. So I'm gonna thank the person who did it. Was PM71241 brought this up, and we had this spirited discussion. So PM71241 said that game design of a semi-co-op, and he said co-op as well, was poor, and effectively the game is broken if a player could tank the game. And that was kind of specifically for a semi-co-op, but co-op came in with this as well. And here was my response that I did online, but I really want to bring it up because this is a really interesting thing. So I said to this person, while I respect this person's opinion, and I'm very glad that we can have a difference of opinions and still be civil in this discourse, I categorically refute and disagree with the game is broken if a player can do something. This is the exact conversation that we had when co-ops came out, when Pandemic came out, back in the day. Pandemic basically started a genre of gaming. Though it was not the first co-op, it was the first successful co-op. Some people railed that the game was broken because one player, they called that the alpha player, could effectively run the whole game and just say, okay, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. I'll just move your stuff around, and then I'll do this for the entire game. The game of Pandemic is absolutely brilliant, and of course it's not broken. The problem, if you're experiencing the above, it's a player problem. I said jerky player. I was using hyperbole. That's not exactly what I'm saying. I meant it's a player problem. Co-ops, in general, suffer from the fact that you can have a player problem, and that player will do bad things. Just don't play with a problem player who could be the greatest player and the greatest friend of yours, and you can play 1,000 other games. But in this style, they don't. They do things that don't work. And the above thing works in the alpha player scenario for co-ops, and in the I'm tanking this game in a semi-co-op. So respectfully, PM 71241. I loved that discussion, and I wanted to bring it up here. I 100% disagree that the game design is broken if this can happen, because we would not have any co-ops. Think about that.
I do really feel that some game design is broken. There are some games that are just very difficult to play or just
absolutely.
don't work.
Sure.
That exists. However, I also believe that the best designed game in the universe can be a horrible experience if you play with the wrong people.
Absolutely. So you have to play every game. I think that's just a good way of putting this. Every game is played with the people that make that game fun for you. If somebody's going to tank a game, I'm just saying, don't play that particular game with them. That's it. So the game is not broken, though some games could be broken via this logic. Okay. I wanted to bring that up. I thought that was just a really interesting...
No, it's a really good point, and it comes up all the time. There's always arguments in prototype rooms and things like that. Is this game broken and prone to problems, or was this a specific group of people or a specific situation?
Right.
The one that I find absolutely fascinating, and there's a couple games out there that work best if everybody knows how the game runs. And if nobody knows how the game runs, it's a hard game to play.
Sure.
And really difficult. The ones that come to my mind are Feudum, which has a really involved system of parts feeding other parts. And if you don't know how that game runs, you can have a group of people just stalling out and having a terrible experience. But it's a fantastic game. The design is really interesting. The Lacerda's Mars game on Mars. If the group of people don't know what they're doing to drive the game forward, it can stall out.
Right.
But it's a great game. It's fantastic. So just a really, really involved.
Yeah. So again, thank you, PM 71241, for that. That was a very interesting conversation we had, and I'm glad we could pick it up here, and I'm glad we could engage with you in this kind of way. So Corey, last week, you asked a question of everybody, which you go ahead, you read it, and then I'm going to pick a few things, and maybe you'll pick a few things.
My question last week was, what do you think is the greatest board gaming sin? What thing that some other board gamers do, and certainly not you, my dear listener, you're perfect.
Of course, you're perfect. Don't ever change.
Someone else does. What thing makes you the most angry or sad? So some ideas about this are analysis paralysis, alpha player, eating Cheetos, being a jerky player, being a bad winner or a bad loser. There's an infinite list of things that are just board gaming sins. I just was curious, what is the worst? What board gaming sin really gets your goat?
And literally the answers that we got in the guild were very varied. So you can see that people have a really interesting list that differs. Like I was like, it's analysis paralysis. I truly don't want to play with someone who takes 10 minutes to play every turn. It's just that ruins the experience. But that's me. But Scott, who is Chambly's, says an hour into a 4-hour game, one player says, "Sorry, I have to leave." Why bother starting in the first place? I mean, that's true. I mean, when you sit down for a game, you should know how long approximately the game is going to play. And I mean, if you didn't know it was a 4-hour game, well, maybe you should have asked, how long will this take? I only have an hour. And then not play. That's a good one. Evan Halbert, he's got two. He said, one was a mean-spirited commentary beyond trash talk. I mean, I guess I've seen that, but I like the trash talk because it's just fun, especially when it's people you know at the table. But yeah, if it's mean-spirited. And then excessive complaining, especially when used for pity politicking. Interesting ones.
Oh my goodness.
That's Evan Halbert, I think I mentioned. And Ramon Mercado is not doing your homework when teaching a game. If you're teaching a new game, I expect you to be prepared. Not only read the rules, look through a playthrough and perhaps even a round or two by yourself. That's
certainly if it's anticipated, if it's known well in advance that Bob is going to teach this game, Bob should be ready. There's certainly lots of times where you're sitting around and someone says, oh, that random game on the shelf, I want to play that. And everybody tries to figure out how to play it on their own. And that's chaos as well.
Absolutely.
I thought Jacob Stein, really interesting. The player that does not play to win, but plays to mess up others.
Ah, the jerky player.
The jerky player. But that's a little different.
I know.
There's a lot of really aggressive competitive players, and the way they do it sometimes, I get that. If they are playing specifically to knock down someone else, especially if it's a meta thing, like, Bob always plays to make sure Corey loses.
That's not so good. Anything else you found?
There's so many good answers in here. So Paul Marchblancs, I haven't had this often, but the player angrily checks out if they don't like the game or feels like they've lost, like constantly. And this, I've talked about this a lot. This brings up the concept of why do you play a game? And I really feel there's three big categories, and I think I've said this almost every podcast. People who play to win, and that is the end-all be-all of everything. People who play to explore, and they check out the mechanisms and do crazy stuff, but don't care if they win. And people who play to be social, where they want to be in a group talking with all their friends, and maybe they're not playing to win, and maybe they also don't get the game.
Right.
And those are hyperboles of the three groups. Those are way out there.
Right. Anything else you want to point out?
I wish I could read all of them.
Yeah, literally almost everyone was different.
This was my favorite one to read. There was so many.
Almost everyone was different. Nick Shaw, he says, players who ask to join a game after you've started, then they don't listen to the rules probably, then moan about the rules when you don't comply with them, then say the game is broken, then end up winning.
I'm going to call that the low focus player. Here's one that leads into the question that I just wrote.
Did you write a question for next week?
I did. Did it not show up?
It's funny it's not showing up, but we'll get to that. Go ahead.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. So, people leaving in the middle of a game.
Sure.
And this is a really controversial one. People leaving in the middle of a game was at Game Changer with Honey. And it's another wonderful one that just makes me think. So, my question.
Oh, well, okay. Well, so let's get into next week's question. It didn't show up on my show notes. It's on your computer and not mine. What is it?
Mine is having trouble hooking to the internet, so I think it just didn't pass it over.
That's pretty funny. So what's your question?
So my question is it okay to leave a game in the middle? Is it okay to say, I'm not having fun with this game at all?
Huh.
Let's go ahead and stop. I'm leaving. Or do you always have to go to the very end, even if you're having a terrible time?
So I've rephrased it a little bit. So is it okay to leave a game in the middle of a game? If so, when is it acceptable to do so? As you said, you might, because it could be situational, right?
Yeah, and we don't want to count things like, tragedy and fire and lightning strikes. And, yeah. I've heard this argument go both ways so many times, and I feel both sides of the argument. If you are playing a game and truly having a terrible time with this game, you really hate it, should you stay to the end for the other people's enjoyment? Should you have a discussion about it? Is it okay to just say, I'm not having fun, I'm leaving?
Yeah. So this is certainly a controversial point and a weird thing. So I think overall, assuming we have all agreed that we're playing this game and it's going to take us an hour or 2 hours, whatever the number is, you probably should play it to the end. However, if somebody says, this game is not good, do you guys think this game is good? If it is an agreement, right? Oh my God, I think this kind of doesn't really work. It's broken. And people are like, yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, you want to just stop? But if enough
discussion,
people,
that is, right, yeah.
I think if enough people kind of want to play it, I think you should kind of stick it out and just say, well, okay, it's not great, and I'm probably not going to do well, and that's fine.
It's one of those Pandora's boxes. Once you open up that thing, it can't be closed back again. Mm-hmm. You have that weird feeling like, I'm the guy who said this game kind of stinks, and I don't want to play, but I'm still playing, and they know it.
Yeah.
So I agonize over this.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
There's very few games that I've truly had a bad time playing.
Yeah.
But if I do, this is something I agonize over.
I think this has been, I'd say this is the one in about 50 or more, 100 games that I've played where it's like,
It's
wow.
almost every game I play with you. But I've just learned to live with that.
I just this game is just bad.
I'm a
Do you guys
gentleman.
really want to play this? I mean, I've said that, and if they say like, oh yeah, let's just finish it out, I'm like, okay, sure. Then
I've done it in prototypes for sure.
Oh, that doesn't.
That's
count.
a different world.
Right? That's a different world. You're playing it and then you're testing the game to see if it works for the designer or the publisher. That doesn't count. We're talking about a game. It came off the shelf. Somebody brought it to the table.
The goal in that prototype is often to get a feel for it so you can judge it, rather than to finish it.
Right, exactly. So, what do you guys think? Please go over to the Guild on BGG, find the playtesting thread with this question, and post your answer, and maybe we'll mention your name and take your answer. We'll talk about it. But it's interesting. I think we're going to have some people give us some crazy answers on this one. It's going to be good.
It's just... I love having the forum of things that I think about all the time in my crazy brain, of just putting it out there and seeing if other people think that way too.
Yeah, this is fun doing this, isn't it?
Doing
this. You know whose idea it was for this playtesting segment? Ignacy.
He's awesome.
He's had so many good ideas for this podcast. Too bad he doesn't show up very often. No, I mean that's.
I think the question after this one is peanut butter overrated? I wonder about that a lot. So
we're not going to ask you that. Let's get over now to the final scoring. Thank you all so much for listening, and help us spread the word about this podcast by telling your friends to download Board Games Insider wherever they like to get their podcasts, or watch Board Games Insider on the Podfather of Gaming YouTube channel. You want to be part of this podcast? You can. Just ask us questions for our strategy and tactics segment by posting them in the correct thread on the Guild and Board Game Geek, or answer our question to you from the playtesting segment by going to the Guild on Board Game Geek and finding the thread with this episode's question. Check out the websites, which are portalgamesus.com, podfathergaming.com, dicetowerdish.com, play2zgames.com. We're all over social media. Please interact with us. Facebook, like our pages, which are /BoardGamesInsider, /PortalGamesUS, /PodfatherGaming, /Play2ZGames, and speak directly to Ignacy, Corey, and Steven on Twitter and Instagram at Portal Games US, at Podfather Gaming, at Dice Tower Dish, and the YouTube channels are Portal Games Studio, the Podfather of Gaming, and Aboveboard TV. And Ignacy is still dancing on Portal Games US on TikTok. We really love to see you guys in person. We hope to see people, what we have seen by the time you hear this, here at Dice Tower West, and then our mostly industry friends, but about 500 people that'll be at the Gathering of Friends in a month from now. It's going to be fun.
Sure.
Going to be great. But anytime you see us, I saw these two lovely people that just, hey, Monacore, like today. Didn't know who they were. Just wandering. They're here early too. It was Joy and John. There was a J and a J. I remember that. I tried to remember. But I don't know if they listened to the podcast. She said she's listened to some. But anyway, we literally love it. I had a 5-minute conversation.
I love it when people come up.
Yeah. Thank you for always listening here, and thank you for interacting with us. We do love it. Board Games Insider, professionally edited by Joshua Bowman from Tabletop Submarine Podcast. If you want your podcast edited by Joshua, reach out to him at tabletopsubmarine@gmail.com. And that great voice you hear doing the intro, the outro, the in-between segments is that of Ray Greenlee, who can be contacted to do your voiceover work at raygreenleevoiceover.com. Corey, do you have any last, final, amazing words for our audience? I don't think you do.
I don't.
There's not much in that head.
No, it's pretty empty. I'm just overwhelmed with being in Vegas again, and being with you, and it's so fun.
We're hugging each other now. See, people who are just listening can't see that, but it is great. It's always great seeing you. It's great when we have the ability to do this in person. It's easier, internet lag and all that kind of stuff. It's easier to hit our marks and stuff like that, as you can tell. And less editing and things like that on the podcast. But thank you to everybody who is a listener, who is a watcher, who engages with us. It really makes us happy, and we do this for you.
I absolutely love doing the podcast, and I just want to thank everybody for the really warm welcome that I've gotten being the new kid for the past year.
Really, even the new guy for a year and a half at this point.
Maybe, I don't know.
It's really killing me because his ego is like off the chart right now. So
thank you.
Everybody, great seeing you. Take care.
See you, everybody.
Bye.